This lecture is on the topic Empires in the 18th Century, and the focus question here is, how did the Spanish and French empires in America develop in the 18th century? As Britain's North American colonies grew, imperial rivalries over North America intensified. But while the colonies of France and Spain were territorially very large, they were much smaller in population and less economically developed. The Spanish Empire stretched from the Pacific coast to New Mexico and the Great Plains, Texas and Florida, and after 1763, Louisiana, but its presence consisted of only a few small outposts. Spanish efforts to reinvigorate its older colonies in the early 1700s foundered. During the second half of the century, the Spanish attempted again to control the region by stabilizing relations with the Comanche and Apache, while those groups continued to compete with one another, displace other communities, and interact with the French in Texas and New Mexico. Enlightenment monarchs attempted to learn more about the region for purposes of greater control and determining how Indians were to be integrated into the Spanish Empire. They also condemned the black legend of uniquely Spanish cruelty, while simultaneously pointing out that a far larger proportion of the Spanish Empire consisted of Indians than the English-American colonies. Despite efforts at reform, no coherent policy was developed, and Spanish power did not eliminate native power. The settler population remained low, and though ranching expanded, the primary commercial activity continued to be trade with the surviving Indian populations. In light of Spain's military struggles in Europe, colonial commanders often failed to receive reinforcements, and the Comanche and Apache continued to dominate large parts of northern New Spain. Fearing Russian settlement, Spain successfully colonized with missions and presidios much of the coast of California. But the diseases they introduced and resettlement of Indians resulted in the near total devastation of California's native population. Also, even more so than other regions of northern New Spain, California drew few settlers, while ranching, Christianizing, and trade made up the primary purposes of Spanish settlement in the region. A densely populated region upon Spanish arrival, the combination of disease and low settler immigration meant that the region was only sparsely populated by the end of Spanish rule in 1821. The French were a far greater threat to British power in North America. During the 18th century, the French population and economy of Canada expanded, while French traders pushed south from the Great Lakes and north from Mobile and New Orleans. By 1750, 10,000 French colonists and slaves lived in Louisiana, mostly working around sugar plantations. Although much smaller in population and economic power than the British colonies, the French colonies, especially in their alliances with powerful Native American tribes, posed a real threat to British Americans.